I'll just start by sharing my screen. So hopefully you should all be able to see that shortly. Everyone see my screen? Is that okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. My name's Smyra Khan. I'm the Senior Manager for PEDRI, which is not the footballer, it's the Public Engagement in Data Research Initiative. And our driver behind that is about shaping the future of public involvement and engagement in data research. So what I want to do is just give you a bit of an overview of what we're about for those of you that might not have heard of us. And then I'll delve into the different work streams that we applied for the funding for. And then I'll hand over to my colleague Doreen, who will talk you through the results and highlight some of the challenges and barriers that we might have pursued. So what are we all about, PEDRI? So we were founded by ADR UK, which is the Administrative Data Research UK, Health Data Research UK, and the ONS, which is the Office for National Statistics. We're a sector-wide partnership across the data-driven research ecosystem. So we essentially bring together different organisations in the sector to work collaboratively on involvement and engagement in data science. And our focus is on health, administrative, and statistical data. We are fairly new and we are still onboarding new members as well. And here you can see some of the logos of some of our partner organisations as well. So what is our focus? What are we all about? So we're about convening collaborations and partnerships. So we collectively work with partners. We know that within data-driven and statistics research, it's complex, and there's hundreds of organisations that hold data about the public or produce and govern research and statistics across the UK, and they all have different remits. But when it comes to PPIE and involvement and engagement, the principles often remain the same, but it's how it works in practice that can be different. So we want to define and subscribe to best practice while furthering adoption in the sector. And the key here is really about avoiding duplication of effort and reinventing the wheel. We all have similar agendas, and when it comes to involvement and engagement, so working collectively, we think is essential. Sharing and creating resources to enable best practice, and then also developing strategic approaches to engagement and communications, what that looks like and who we should be focusing on, and ultimately to reduce the waste in the system and increase efficiency overall in PPIE in data science. So when we submitted our application for the community group funding, we submitted an application collaboratively with the UK Health Data Research Alliance. And this decision was really well founded, actually, as the Alliance includes various different organisations whose involvement has proven to be quite beneficial in maximising the potential of the funding that we were able to utilise. So in terms of the different work streams, the first one was developing and the adoption of the draft PEDRI best practice standards for the use of data for statistics and research. So the purpose behind these was to initiate and help data research professionals and organisations to effectively engage with the public. We knew that there's already the UK public standards and we didn't want to duplicate effort. So we did a review, a light touch review of what's already out there and whether there was a real need for a set of standards that worked specifically for data science. And it was made clear that actually there was a need. So we wanted to do collaborative standardization where we worked together to improve and streamline the standards. That was coordinated by PEDRI. So we carried out several consultations. In 2023, we had an inclusive consultation process where we involved professionals, members of the public, academics, and this was really to help refine and focus the standards so they could actually work in practice for people. And we wanted to make sure that they were relevant to different organisations, and they actually worked. And following that, we also have a publication from that consultation, and that really outlines the insights and the recommendations of what we should be doing next in terms of the standards as well. The next work stream was around community engagement, focused on public involvement and engagement in data science. And the deliverables under this aim were really to organise community activities, online meetings with focused discussions, topic identification and promoting active participation as well. We wanted to provide a platform that provides opportunity to discuss challenges and collectively work on solutions that could potentially add to the evidence base around PPIE and data intense research. These outputs that could then be added to the central resource hub, which links to Workstream 3, which I'll talk about in a minute. And this group will also provide opportunity for collaborative working on joint agendas such as promotion of EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion, and working towards increasing transparency, trust amongst varied communities. Also, as part of this deliverable, we propose convening a subgroup of PEDRI, which convened through the UK Health Data Research Alliance, and that brought together Alliance members and the health-related organisations, which worked really, really well. Workstream 3 was around establishing a central resource hub and improving transparency and functionality of the PEDRI website and Alliance web pages. So the key deliverable under this was to redevelop the current PEDRI website. We knew that we needed a platform that we could engage with organisations, members of the public, and we really needed to work on that. We've done extensive work to improve its transparency, accessibility and functionality as well. And the focus of the grant was to really support the redesign of the website and associated Alliance web pages as well. It also involved the piloting of an online resource hub on the new website, ensuring user friendliness and accessibility was absolutely key for us. Workstream 4 was around planning for national public awareness campaigns. And this deliverable was kind of the key deliverable under this workstream was to kind of extend our outreach, really think about those that have been underserved and underrepresented in data. And the deliverable was to be met through the development of a plan that would outline inclusive and accommodating methods for engagement and communication, which then would cater for diverse needs of our audience. The methods would then aim to allow open dialogue between data controllers, scientists, researchers, and members of the public. And I guess our kind of key objectives around this campaign was around this work was around raising awareness. So to really drive public awareness of health data and how it's actually used to lead to patient benefit and how public members are involved in data intense research. And then there was something around sort of reassurance to really provide a platform for open dialogue, Q&As, and to help the public to make more informed decisions about safe and transparent use of data as well, which was absolutely at the forefront of everything we did. Right, I'm now going to hand over to Doreen, who will talk us through the results and the kind of key challenges and highlights.
Okay, thank you. I hope you're okay to continue doing the slides in the background slide. Brilliant. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. So I'll speak very quickly. I think we have about 3.5 minutes left around the results. So we have a final report on the consultation on the draft standards. This was published in April, and we've linked it there. It has some fascinating findings that are going to help us to refine the final version of the standards. But one of the recommendations from the consultation and the engagements that we carried out was actually that people would like a living document. So when I say the final versions of the standards, we are going to continually update them so that they reflect practice, best practices, good practices, and emerging impact as people adopt the standards. We had 2 events. One was focused on the public and the other was focused on practitioners and academics. And it was really to consult on the standards, but also to explore the barriers and facilitators to adoption. So it was great that the grant was helpful in helping us to achieve that aim. We also had an informal consultation with the NHS England Secure Data Environments Network, which was really useful in helping us to see how some of them had adopted the standards and the challenges that they were facing, as well as the facilitators. So that will all feed into the reworking of those standards. And I think it's worth saying as well that through the consultation process, we have decided to change it into good practice standards. So if you're looking for the best practice standards and don't find them, that's because they're called good practice. The second work stream, we had 3 very successful community events that we facilitated with the Alliance. It brought together a range of professional practitioners as well as public members, data custodians, researchers to really discuss and prioritize topics for discussion, including PEDRI and the ongoing work in PEDRI. So they fed into the standards as well, feeding into work package 1. But we also spoke about what happens in fields outside of health, because a lot of public members were not aware of what some of our partner organizations do with the different data types. We also had a dedicated session on equality, diversity, and inclusion, as well as impact. And we've learned a lot from this. One report is published, and we're going to publish the next two in the next few weeks as well. The third work package around the rebranding took longer than planned, but we have had some exciting messaging from the designers of the new website, and we hope that within the scope of April, around September, October, we will have a new website and then have the resource hub that Samira spoke about. In the last work package, this was around the communication campaign. We've been working with ScienceWise to progress this further. Next slide, please.
Just one more minute, Doreen. Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of next steps, we need to refine the standards, push for dissemination, adoption, and then monitoring, evaluation, and learning. And then also publish the final two reports that I mentioned around the workshops, and then also continue to collect resources. We have a spreadsheet with resources that we've scoped, but we want to collect more resources and establish partnerships with people working in this area. And then for the communication strand, we're going to produce a workshop report, which will help us to plan the deliberations and communication campaign. Next slide, please. And then just to wrap up, in terms of lessons learned, we've learned that you need to be adaptable and to have two-way communication with whoever is funding your study, especially with projects that have so many different partners. And then the last was making sure that you connect with people to avoid duplication in the sector where we are working within a very busy field. And then the very last one was that there is quite low awareness of the benefits and how to do public engagement in different data sectors. So for us, I think it really emphasized the need for PEDRI and for the work that we're doing to further best practices with the sector. Next slide, please. Yeah, and that's just a contact if you'd like to find out more about the work, because we had to rush through a little bit of it. And apologies for going just over ballot.
No problem at all. Thank you so much, Doreen and Samira. That was really clear. We do have time for one question. If anybody wants to raise their hand, I think there's been questions on links, but I think there's lots of links there for us to follow. Do we have one question? If not, maybe I'll. I was just wondering about on the resource. I know this hasn't been quite sort of developed yet in terms of the resource hub, but what your sort of is that for resources that PEDRI produces, or does it include other resources from others, and what your criteria are for including those?
So for the resources hub, we've collated existing resources. I think what PEDRI would like to do is to add value to what exists rather than duplicating work. But in cases where there's gaps in the resources, then we will produce resources specific for the data science field and statistics.
Okay, great. Any more questions, do put them in the chat. Otherwise, we should crack on. And next, I would like to introduce, I think Hari is going to be talking about the work of the UK TRE community. I think I can see you on the screen, Hari.
My computer literally just froze for a
No
second,
worries.
but I am back. I was going to panic message David there and be like, it literally just froze. I'm trying to turn my camera on. Hi, everyone. I am just going to share my screen. Here, I think I'll share my entire screen. And if I do that and do this, is that just the slides in front? Cool. So I'm going to jump in and out to show you some stuff that we've been doing. Cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Hari, and that's like when you go somewhere quickly, you're in a hurry. I am a research application manager at the Turing Institute and also a co-chair of the UK TRE community. And I'm going to tell you a bit more about what we've been doing with this funding window from November to March, but we also have the other co-chairs of the community here that I would like to quickly introduce themselves just to say hi and recognize their contribution to this. So maybe we start with David. We can pass on.
Hello, everyone. I'm David. I'm research project manager here at Turing, also a co-chair for Sunshine in the UK theory community, and one of those that have been funded to work over these past few months directly, directly in the community and doing this work. Yeah, that's me quickly because we don't have a lot of time. I see Simon. I see you there.
Hi.
So
Yep. Hi, I'm Simon Lee. Hi, I'm Simon Lee. I'm an infrastructure engineer at Health Informatics Centre, University of Dundee. Along with Harry, I was involved in setting up the UK TOE, or formerly IRC TOE, and continue heavily involved in the TOE community, and also running TOE infrastructure. So
Is
I
Madeline
can't see who
here?
else is here.
Madeline?
Sure. I'm Madeline Hardaker, and to work on this with these guys. Is that everybody, I think, from us?
Yes, well, there's Balin as well. Balin's had an introduction already.
Yeah.
Cool. So we want to start with like why the UK TRE community exists and what we're trying to do. And we think it's often helpful to think about why it exists in terms of the challenges in the TRE landscape. And what we find is that TREs, and these are the trusted research environments, or SDEs that Balin was referring to at the beginning, firstly are really hard. We find a lot of people in the space in the UK who are trying to provision this infrastructure and make sure the research of sensitive data is happening well, find it very tricky to provide this infrastructure really effectively. There's also paired with the fact that they're really important. It's kind of no secret that the future of sensitive data research in the UK and beyond will rely on the usage of TREs. So not only are they hard to get right, but the train has left the station and we're going to need to use them going forward, and we need to make sure we get them right. We've also found that teams across the UK, again, and beyond, struggle with a lot of the same problems. They're asking the same questions, having the same technical and non-technical challenges, and there'll be benefit from sharing these problems together. And also, there's a limited shared collective understanding of what a TRE is. We've already heard the term SDE. There's terms SRE, like Secure Research Environment, DSH for Data Safe Haven. So it's hard to know what we're even building and what good looks like if we can't agree on what we're trying to build in the first place. So we've thought a great thing to help resolve some of these challenges would be to have a UK TRE community and a space where people interested in TREs in the UK can come together to do things like share knowledge, to collaborate together, to avoid working on the same things but working them together, and to move towards to share best practice and move towards a place of standardization and common approaches to this infrastructure and these problems. And so we came together to form the UK TRE community, which has the vision of having a 4 nations coordinated collaborative approach to research infrastructure for working with sensitive data. And as Balin highlighted, sensitive data isn't just healthcare data, it can also be finance data, administrative data, educational data, commercial data, all this kind of stuff as well. And our mission is to provide the space to signpost, share knowledge, and facilitate conversations across the UK TRE landscape. And the key here is we are driven by community needs. We're not coming as co-chairs with a specific agenda for ourselves. We're trying to focus on what the community wants, what interested people want to work on, and how we can facilitate those conversations taking place. So a very brief history. As Simon mentioned, we had our first meeting, which he organized at RSEcon in September 2022 with about 30 people attending, just to start the community off, write our foundational document, and see where we could go from there. We have kind of snowballed since, and in September 2023, our 1-year anniversary, we had a meeting in Swansea, which we think, and we always say think, was the biggest meetup of people working or interested in TREs in the UK to date, with over 150 people attending, both online and in person. Here's a beautiful picture from that day. It was a beautiful day. There were no clouds in the sky, and it was right on the beach. It was great. And thinking about sort of like the timeline of our history, so you can see we started here with a mailing list in February 2023, so after our first event at 0, and we slowly grew to around about 100 at the time of the September event. That September event was a massive jump and step change in what the community was doing, and we realized that when your community doubles in size like this overnight, you really have to start thinking about how to manage it more formally, which we think is a good community management law, but doesn't exist yet. So we've called it the Sarmiento Perez law, and we're providing a legacy for David here. And yeah, so since then, we've been thinking about how to organize the community sort of more with a bit more structure and a bit more careful management. And so we applied for this group's funding when our community membership was about 225 people. And since then, we've grown to about 280. So you can see this full story here of like easy, informal grassroots beginning, a big shock factor on, wow, there's so many people who want to be involved here. And then a bit more focus on, okay, how do we build like strong foundations for the community going forward? And that's been the focus of what we've been doing with this funding. And so what this funding has allowed us to do is create this more secure, robust, and capable community research infrastructure to enhance research outcomes and community outputs. And so we focused on 3 things that we've called strengthening the community, enhancing outreach and engagement, and developing a resource hub. You can see some similar themes here from the Pedri presentation as well. I'll take you through what we've been doing in each one. So on strengthening the community, I did ask ChatGPT a while ago how important are strong foundations, and I got the response vitally crucial. And even though it reads a bit weird, I think we could all agree that they are vitally crucial. And so we've been thinking about what it takes to build these strong foundations and effectively have really strong governance for the community. So this includes making sure we have clear roles and responsibilities, having clear mentorship criteria, having clear governing documents and decision-making processes. And we've been really iterating these with the community to make sure we're all happy with them and that we've established these processes properly. And those documents are now live. I'm just going to quickly show you a light intro to them. They all live here. So how we manage events, how we manage decision-making and consensus in the community, how we manage these governance documents, what it means to be in the steering group and become a co-chair, what it means to be part of a working group, all that kind of stuff. And you can find all this information online, and hopefully it sets up that community to be successful from anyone who wants to get involved at any point. We've also set up very clear and open ways of working and clear contributing mechanisms as well. So these links are here. We have an open project board on GitHub, which we realize can be a bit intimidating. We also have non-technical ways to contribute, but this tracks all of the things that we're doing in the community in an open way. And we have a clear process for others to contribute to this and get involved in taking on community tasks. We do have a long contributing file that lays all this out, including how to sign up to and get introduced to GitHub. So if you are interested in upskilling in that, we'd love for you to contribute. But we also have non-technical ways of contributing through a bunch of Google forms like this. So if you're not familiar with GitHub and don't really want to learn it, you can still get involved in the community and the work that we're doing. We've also set up the idea of working groups. This is kind of modeled off these working groups, interest groups, and also the RDA working groups to have sort of focus areas for people in the community to come together and work on outputs together. And as of writing, we have 5 to 6 working groups getting started, including SDE TRE definitions, a glossary working group, citizen agency, cybersecurity risks, and SATRA. And we're seeing momentum build for these groups. We don't have a huge amount to share yet because we're having a big working groups day this coming Monday, and we're going to have a lot more outputs to share from that as well. So please do stay tuned for updates from these working groups. They are up and running and getting started. And this will allow us to build a roadmap for what work is going on in the community and what work we'd like to see as well. We've been focusing on enhancing outreach and engagement through our communication and collaboration spaces. We have our mailing list, 280 people. We've also set up an open Slack that anyone can join for discussions and working group. And we've delivered both our December and March quarterly community events, which were attended by over 70 people at each. We had over 100 register for each one, and we'll continue to deliver those at quarterly intervals. And finally, we've been focusing on developing a resource hub, which is similar to the Pedri presentation, of having a sort of central place for anyone in the space to come together and collaborate on key issues for the community. And again, making sure we have these contribution pathways that are both technical for people who want to work on technical infrastructure, but also non-technical for people who want to just be involved in other ways as well. To not only focus on content generation, but reviewing and feeding back on content that's being generated, to also think about maintenance and support for the community itself, and have all these different roles and positions in the community. So you can be a co-chair, you can be a member, you can be a working group lead, you can be an interested member to cater for everybody's involvement who wants to be involved. And we do have a new website that we did have a documentation site before, and it's quite hard to navigate, and we're working on developing a slightly more user-friendly version of the website, which looks a bit like this. And I have also loaded, like with Pedri, we're still in the process of finalizing it and migrating it, but it's going to look something like this, and just is a bit easier to navigate. And you can see a bit more about us as a community, resources that we're collating as a community, the working groups that exist at the moment and how you can get involved, upcoming events within the community, other ways to get involved through our mailing list, Slack, and repo as well. And yeah, we are just in the process of finalizing parts of this, and then we'll share it more widely once we have it as well. Oop. There we go. And in terms of what we're doing now, so we're going to carry on. Now we don't, the funding has ended. We don't have allocated staff time to work on it, but we still have the voluntary co-chairs and other members of the community as well. And we're going to focus on continuing to do what seems to be working at the moment, going quite well, which is having cultivating even more representative meetings and spaces. So we have our quarterly meetings, community management meetings, working group meetings. They're all going really well. We want to make sure that they do remain as representative as possible for everybody who is working in the space and who is interested in the space. And so making sure that we're engaging the right people and running those meetings really effectively for the community as well. And also supporting working group formation and outputs. After the working group day, a big focus is going to be making sure those working groups maintain the momentum and we start seeing community outputs that everyone can use and benefit from. And in terms of what we think we need, I think a big one is this idea of funding. So it's been really helpful to have allocated resourcing time to work on this. And if we want to maintain the momentum for the community management and maintenance for the support for working groups, we've also floated a 2024 TRE conference, and it could even be a 2-day conference in September. These would be great aims, and we have the momentum to do it, but we do need some funding for staffing time to work on them to deliver them effectively. And also just continued engagement from the community. We can't do anything without the very active community we have. We have some members on this call who are involved in working groups as well, and we're really grateful for everyone's engagement and activity and energy in the space. And this means we can run really effective community meetings on key issues that community members bring. We can have working groups to represent the issues being faced by people in the spaces at the moment, and we can have volunteers working on management and outreach to make sure the community is thriving. And I think that continued engagement is critical for our success. So that is it from me. I hope I'm on time. I think I might be like 1 or 2 minutes over. This is just a few next steps. So you can scan this QR code to register for our next quarterly meeting that will be in June, and we'll circulate details soon. And also all these ways to get involved. We'll share these slides afterwards openly for anybody to get involved. Love to see you there. Yeah, happy to take any questions.
Thanks so much, Harry. That was a great whistle-stop tour of all the activities. There's lots of stuff going on in the chat. I suggest we carry on asking the questions and getting answers from co-chairs in the chat, just because in the interest of time, we should probably move on to our next presentation from, I think Lewis is going to be presenting on work from the AI risk evaluation group, if Lewis is on the call.
Hello. So our community group was to set up an AI risk evaluation group to really gather perspectives from members of the public, AI researchers and data providers on the sort of development of safe AI within trusted research environments. So of course there was the DARE UK Grey Matter report, and this work was really to build upon that, to understand what some of the unique challenges are with neuroimaging and genomics in AI disclosure control, how researchers actually feel implementing some of these privacy-preserving techniques into their research, and also to gather what the risk appetite is of data providers, and how we can help researchers implement techniques in their research, but also how we can help data providers quantify risk and be able to assess these models with confidence to be able to release them from trusted research environments. So we had a great group of collaborators as part of this, and a real range of organisations and universities represented through our researcher and data provider workshops as part of this group. So our first workshop was with members of the public, where we really wanted to understand what their concerns were with AI. And so, the main themes popped up here were things like bias, over-reliance, things like a lack of regulation, and also crucially as well, identification, especially if people have rare conditions or are from minority backgrounds. Regarding the use of their health data, again, this was around identifiability, having a lack of control over, what's shared, what's not, how their consent might have been given before AI was a concern. And this stuff kind of fed into the unknown as well. So not really having any clarity on what their data is being used for and what the research is that's being performed on that data. And so they really wanted more public involvement in the sort of decision stage of AI projects within TREs. So there's many different privacy attacks and vulnerabilities in AI models. I won't go into too much detail into these. You can go read about these in the report. And there's different mitigations which can be implemented either at the training stage of AI models or at the sort of sharing.
I don't know if it's just me, but have we lost sound from Lewis?
Yeah,
We have. Yeah.
Sorry, Lewis. I think your sound's gone.
On my laptop.
Yeah, go on. Oh, you're back on now.
Should be working now.
Is that working now? Yeah.
All good.
Okay, so from our researcher workshop, we wanted to understand how researchers felt implementing these techniques. So we wanted to measure the ease of implementation and the effect on utility and how well they protected against privacy. So of course, things like encrypted methods were very good at protecting privacy, but were a lot harder to implement, researchers found. Whereas things like synthetic data and differential privacy, even though they didn't offer as good as protection, they were a lot easier to implement. Then we wanted to understand what the risks were with neuroimaging and genomics, and people felt that neuroimaging didn't really necessarily present any unique concerns regarding sort of disclosure. The concerns more were with genetic data being a lot more risky. In Deep UK, we have a lot of our AI model projects using neuroimaging and genomics data to develop AI. So just because it's being used more, there's more of a risk, but genomics data really presented a unique concern with AI disclosure control, and also difficulties in implementing some of these techniques as well. And we also assessed the sort of different data types that researchers felt were most risky. And of course, a whole genome sequencing data was at the top there, whereas something like a deface structural scan was actually at the bottom because they didn't really feel like that posed any sort of disclosure risk. So researchers didn't really feel like they had the expertise or knowledge to implement a lot of these techniques in their research. And this was mainly due to a lack of resources and training available for them to actually learn about these risks and how they can effectively implement them given the types of data that they're using and the types of models that they're developing in their research. And so this was really due to a lack of experience, it not really being common practice and not being a mature space yet. So they really felt like they needed guidelines to be able to help them implement the right techniques for their research. And also, training is really crucial to be able to support that. But they also required tools to enable them to help implement these techniques as well, because we need to make it as easy as possible for researchers to implement these without hindering scientific progress. We evaluated the sort of concerns between having to trade off accuracy of privacy in some of these techniques. And there was a real mix of views in this. Some people felt that it was absolutely necessary, so it doesn't matter if accuracy is affected slightly from these techniques. But others had a bit of resistance to implementing some of these techniques, saying that, they don't want that accuracy to be affected in their models. Then from our data provider workshop, we found that the data providers were slightly concerned about the development of AI on their data, even though a lot of them were happy for AI research to take place within trusted research environments. This was because they didn't really feel equipped to be able to assess AI projects, and they didn't feel comfortable being able to do this either. So they felt that privacy observing tools were essential to mitigating these risks, and that there should be training for data providers as well as researchers to be able to help make the decisions on the safety of AI models being released from trusted research environments. So moving on to some of the recommendations that we developed as part of this work. Of course, the first thing is researcher training and sort of assessment to be able to learn about these risks and to be able to implement these techniques, to have a go at implementing them before they're given access to the data in the trusted research environment, so that we can be sure they know how to implement these techniques into their research. And we're actually developing some courses through Data Size to enable researchers to learn about these risks in trusted research environments and how they can mitigate them, given certain types of models and data that they're using. As well, impact risk assessments were important in determining whether an AI project should take place within a trusted research environment. Dementia's Platform UK already has some form of this, but we've developed this further and implemented pre- and post-project stage AI risk impact forms to sort of assess the sort of data being used, the models used, and how the researchers plan on deploying and sharing those models. And then, of course, the decision process should really include public engagement part of that, so that we can ensure that these models are being built in public benefit, but also having input from AI experts and clinicians to ensure that this project is actually reasonable and has clinical benefit if being released from the environment to be translated. So as well, we created tools to be able to generate synthetic data and evaluate that, to help researchers evaluate that trade-off between privacy and utility, which they seem to struggle with. So through these tools, researchers can feed in a data set and visualize nicely the sort of trade-off between privacy and utility against a range of different evaluation metrics to be able to evaluate how well their synthetic data protects privacy whilst still providing that good level of utility for their AI model projects. We then identified different release scenario risks, where of course public release with no mitigations was deemed as a high risk, whereas something like secure hosting for clinical implementation was very minimal. And so depending on these different risks sharing scenarios, there were sort of different recommendations put in place regarding these. But considering the assessment of AI models, there's of course the DARE UK SACRO project, which looked at developing tools to attack AI models for assessment. And through our workshops, we found that data providers felt that this offered the most suitable sort of check to ensure that AI models do protect the privacy in the training data. So we really need to ensure that we're building these models as a community and to be able to ensure that we can quantifiably assess AI model projects for release. We also developed an AI risk index as part of our workshops, which took into consideration members of the public, researchers and data providers' views regarding different types of data and models and their release scenarios and different techniques, so that we can use this in the decision process after the project to quantify how risky an AI model might be to release. But I think a key recommendation from this work was the application of the FAIR framework for AI models. We don't necessarily need to release AI models from trusted research environment. I think one of the main reasons we found from the researcher workshop that people want to publish AI models is for open and reproducibility purposes, to publish on something like GitHub. But we don't actually need to publish on GitHub. We can publish through the trusted research environment, as long as we're making that accessible to other researchers to be able to come into the TRE and use and reproduce and validate in external data sets. So those were the kind of perspectives that we gathered from our workshops to really understand, how we can effectively implement these sort of techniques and recommendations into a trusted research environment and the feasibility of that. This workshop mainly focused around privacy, but another big thing that came up in the workshops was bias as well. So I think in the future, the issue of bias and how TREs can help with that is something that this group wants to look at further as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Lewis. That was another really clear presentation and taken through very, very quickly. Again, conscious here on time, do put questions in the chat that the team can respond to. But we will move on to a presentation from Jim Smith, who will talk about the SDC Reboot community group.
Hi, everyone. Hopefully you've got the right image of just one slide on screen.
That's good.
Yep, great. So I'm Jim Smith. We created this interest group with their funding, which is supposed to be our intention was always that this would be a long-term thing. Our initial focus, we called it evaluation of automated output checking and AI risk assessment. Mercifully, at the first meeting, people rapidly decided that was a daft name for a thing, and that agreed on SDC Reboot. SDC is Statistical Disclosure Control, and Reboot was about saying it's reducing barriers to output from TREs, but getting this across this idea that we wanted to take a fresh idea at stuff. So I'm presenting on behalf of my co-chairs who, through unfortunate mixture of illness, leave and other commitments, are not able to be here today. The initial group was a large consortium of universities, of many different TREs from the UK and abroad, or people who recognise that coming out of the Grey Matter and SACRO projects, and also bringing on board DataShield, which have been on board, which have been doing automated assessment for a while. There was a lot of people interested in how automated assessment could be used to reduce bottlenecks to output checking, but also if you're going to do AI, you can't avoid automated output checking. And originally, we planned to have 4 foci, one of which was finishing off some piece of work and agreeing standardization about conceptual development and taxonomies, and particularly things like the stats bond concepts, but agreement around SDC processes and starting to formalise different paradigms of automated assessment so that TREs could make informed choices about what to use when. The second part was about reducing barriers to researchers and adopting these. So in some paradigms like Data Shield and what Stats Canada do, for example, you're simply forced to use their tools. We wanted, SACRO had gone down a different route of encouraging people to use tools, but that involves the production of training resources, increased support for the ways that people normally work, so through Stata, having asked versions on CRAN, things like that, research mentors. We had identified a load of blocks to the adoption by TREs that we wanted to deal with through a mixture of resources and different support mechanisms. And of course, there was the huge piece which Lewis has already described. So a lot of the work that had gone in grey matter and SACRO about how do we do this risk assessment and how do we help TREs operationalise that risk assessment and therefore enable the use of AI within their TREs. In terms of what we actually did as a group and how we got stuff, so the first thing we did was went and talked to Harry and Simon from UK TRE and said, what have you found that works, what doesn't work, and so on. And we very quick, as soon as we agreed on a better name, set up a disk mail address for bouncing around communications, making announcements, having lively discussions about whether you should ever let HTML out of TRE, things like that. At the end of March, that had 48 subscribers from 24 different organisations. We set up monthly, or in one case, 2 in a month, online workshops. 2 of these were general ones, looking at things like governance and models and how that stuff should be set up. And 2 were more focused on the processes and the risks and the tools for managing the risk assessment of AI and how TREs can support the use of AI. And we have between 20 and 40 people in each of those. DARE provided support for some staff time, which we used to produce a whole load of resources. So things like a YouTube channel, with a load of videos of how-to guides and encouragement videos for researchers and TRE staff, and Google Drive folder of shareable resources. These were very much first versions taken to community meetings, revisions accepted, whatever, and then we used that resources to produce final versions of that. And there was, I've put these ones in a last group because these were far more sort of one-to-one support, which we found was what people wanted. So through weekly drop-in help sessions, but we had all sorts of range of breakout meetings between various TREs and different members of the community, just talking to people about how they might set up output checking processes and things like this. And I guess I should include in there the fact that there was a really nice interaction. So I went and gave a talk to one of the meetings that Lewis talked about in the previous presentation, just building communities, lots and lots of effort into talking to people through a mixture of big workshops and along the order of about 20 one-to-one meetings between various different people in the community. We also used the funding to support 2 in-person meetings, the main one of which was in Liverpool, where we had 37 people from 18 organisations, 2 big sessions there, one around sort of getting community input and formalising the feedback on the stat bonds manual, this idea that there are different families of outputs that researchers use, and those families comes with common risks and common mitigations. The second half of that 2-day event was more around different paradigms, so sort of SACRO versus Data Shield and what the future might hold. But this was a community event, so actually in practice that turned into something else, which we were very happy to let flow. It became more about networking stuff. And then there was a 2-day retreat in Southampton, which span out of this, and separate funding from ESRC, Future Data Services, with people like NHS SDEs and the Government's Integrated Data Service there, looking at SDC processes and about trying to agree standardization of output processes. I think it's really important that communities live and change, and we've already seen that in the way that the UK TRE community in general has expanded in interest. And of course, when we wrote our original foci, most of the people involved in creating those documents were existing TREs. One of the fantastic things was that we had lots and lots of new and nascent TREs or NHS SDEs got involved, people who are just thinking about setting up TREs and wanted to build in automated assessment processes from the get-go, people wanting to think about from the get-go about how do we do the end-to-end support for AI models and stuff like that. And that meant some inevitable reprioritization of what we did. Some things we moved to happen in later meetings, like the governance docs will be going to the June meeting and so on, so we could provide more opportunities for one-to-one networking, for peer support and things like that, and to really encourage just people getting involved and asking all those really important questions. In terms of what we're doing next, we're going to be keeping on with the quarterly meetings, whether or not we get more support. Obviously, I didn't bother to put in the plea for more support, but we feel that there is work to be done here. The next meeting in June is going to be looking at things like more input on learning materials and governance, but we're going to be bringing those together with the AI thread stuff. Continued supportment, bringing SACRO and AI SDC and Data Shield into close alignment. Data Shield are very keen on the StatsBond's way of grouping together and describing all the different kinds of analytics that Data Shield supports. Separately, we've raised some issues and thinking about some of the ways that Data Shield Protect tables are suited to some kind of domains and not to others. So we're sort of lots of work around bringing stuff into close alignment, providing more alternatives for TREs, I guess what it's all about. The ongoing issues about how we can build more stuff and share it. So, for example, at HIC, they've got draft documents that they're taking to their data custodians and people at the moment. So say this is going to be our policy about how we go around doing ethics approval and the sort of end-to-end approval and safety assurance about projects that use AI. And we're hoping to sort of build that out as a case study for people might want to think of this is how you go about deploying stuff in practice. These are kind of useful practical tools. The Scottish Safe Havens Network are going to be discussing how do you go around publishing case studies. So where we've had a load of cases now where various members of the community and people from SACRO have helped TREs do risk assessment of trained AI models using the AI SDC toolkit. So how do we make those that learning that's happened through doing that available to the community, but in a way that isn't itself disclosive? So they're kind of having to design what do those case studies look like, and a number of different organisations are in the final stage of exploring models for being able to sort of make that expertise that was developed through Grey Matter and SACRO and other places available to help other TREs. So it is one of the things that TREs said to us right from the outset. They kind of wanted a community of expertise that they could draw on the assumption that not all TREs would be able to have all the AI knowledge they needed in-house. And more and better learning materials, we're expecting these to be growing, especially as we grow out the researcher use base and get their use. We would love more and more people to get involved. Easiest way to do it is to email sdcreboot@gistmail.ac.uk with the word subscribe in the subject. Doesn't matter what you put in the body of the email. And that covers all things automated. There are links to repositories and things on there as well. Got a minute over. Thank you for listening. I better stop.
Thanks so much, Jim. And yeah, really great to hear about some of the sort of cross-fertilization that's going on across the different community groups, so not just the AI risk evaluation group, but also UKTRE, among others. We're essentially at time, so I just one reflection perhaps from me is that I think the community groups initiative has been a bit of an experiment for us, I think it's fair to say. What I think it's shown is that there is a lot of appetite out there for community-driven activities. And I think what we've learned is that a little goes a long way here, given the amount of enthusiasm there is in the community. But really just to say that as a programme, we're really keen to continue to support these sorts of community-driven activities in whatever way we can in the future. So thank you to all of the speakers, all the co-chairs for presenting and keeping to time so well. I know people have been very good about responding to questions in the chat. Yeah, like I say, we'll share the slides and the recording. And thank you all for joining. I hope we see you soon.